Hey, welcome to the Biochemistry Academy, where we teach all biochemistry courses for students in biochemistry, medicine, pharmacy, microbiology, medical lab science, and all science courses. Well, in today's video, we will talk about the chemistry of carbohydrates, or simply carbohydrate chemistry. We are going to understand the definition of carbohydrates, the classification of carbohydrates, and the functions of carbohydrates. So the question is, what are carbohydrates? Now, carbohydrates are the main source of energy in our body, and most of the food that we eat contains carbohydrates. Now, most cells like our brain cells, our blood cells, and our muscle cells, which mostly depends on carbohydrates, which is glucose. They are used by both plants and animals. They are mainly known as saccharide, which means sugar. So to properly define carbohydrates, they are substances containing carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and they have the general molecular formula of CnH2ON. So they can be defined as polyhydroxyl aldehydes or ketones derivative of compounds which yield these derivatives on hydrolysis. You might be wondering, what is this ketone and aldehyde? In case you might have forgotten, let us refresh your memory a little. Well, ketones are compounds that have this group called a ketone group, which is CO. And aldehydes are compounds that have this group CHO. So let us move to the classification of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are classified as monosaccharide, disaccharide, oligosaccharides, and polysaccharide. Now, monosaccharide, it is known as simple sugar. They are the simplest form of carbohydrate because they cannot be further hydrolyzed into smaller units. Then this disaccharide, they are the combination of two monosaccharide units that are linked together by a glycosidic bond. And this oligosaccharide, they contain 3 to 10 monosaccharide units that are linked together by glycosidic linkage. Then the next classification, this polysaccharide, they contain more than 10 monosaccharide units. So let us talk about each one individually, starting from monosaccharide. Now, as the name implies, mono means one. So the word mono means one, and so they are the simplest form of carbohydrate. They cannot be further hydrolyzed, meaning that they cannot be further broken down into smaller units. Now, these monosaccharide are further classified into aldoses and ketoses. Aldoses are the ones that have aldehyde in their functional group, while ketoses are the ones that have ketones in their functional group. Now, example of monosaccharide in the aldoses are glyceraldehyde, glucose. Then example of monosaccharide in ketoses are fructose. So let us look at their structural form of each to see the difference using glucose from aldoses and fructose from ketoses. In the structure of glucose, we can see the aldehyde group at the top, at this level, the CHO group, while in the structure of fructose, the ketone group CO is around here. Some more examples of aldoses sugar are glyceraldehyde, which is a 3-carbon sugar, erythrose, which is a 4-carbon sugar, ribose, which is a 5-carbon sugar, glucose, which is a 6-carbon sugar, also known as hexoses, and glucoheptose, which is a 7-carbon sugar. And some more examples of ketosis are dihydroxyacetose, which is a 3-carbon sugar, erythrolose, which is a 4-carbon sugar, ribulose, which is a 5-carbon sugar, fructose, a 6-carbon sugar, and sidoheptose, which is a 7-carbon sugar. So next, let us talk about disaccharide. We say they are the most common saccharide, and they consist of 2 monosaccharide units. That means 2 units of monosaccharide are linked together by a glycosidic bond. Now, these disaccharides, they are crystalline, they are water soluble, and they are very sweet. Now, the disaccharide have free aldehyde or ketone group known as the reducing disaccharide. An example of this is maltose and lactose. And if it doesn't have the aldehyde or the ketone group, it is known as a non-reducing disaccharide. An example of such is sucrose. Now let us look at the reducing disaccharide first, starting with maltose. Now, maltose is made up of alpha-D-glucose and alpha-D-glucose, meaning that 2 molecules of alpha-D-glucose are linked together by a alpha-1,4 glycosidic bond. While lactose is made up of glucose and galactose, it is a milk sugar and it is linked by beta-1,4 glycosidic bond. So next, the non-reducing disaccharide, which is sucrose. Now, it is made up of alpha-D-glucose and beta-D-fructose. It is the normal sugar we often use, especially for men that are involved in sports. It is linked by an alpha-1,2 glycosidic bond. Now let us look at the next classification of carbohydrates, which are the oligosaccharides. And these oligosaccharides, they contain 3 to 10 monosaccharide units. They do not occur as free entities, but they occur as glycoconjugates, like the glycoproteins and the glycolipids. Now, example of these oligosaccharides includes raffinose, which are present in plants, and they are made up of 3 monosaccharide units, which are alpha-D-glucose, beta-D-glucose, and beta-D-fructose. And they are mainly present in beans, cabbage, or other vegetables. Then another example of an oligosaccharide are the stachyros, and they comprised of 4 monosaccharide units, which are 2 galactose, 1 glucose, and 1 fructose. They are present in vegetables and in some plants. Then another example of an oligosaccharide are verbacose, which consist of 5 monosaccharide units, which are 3 galactose, 1 glucose, and 1 fructose, and these are present in legumes. The next classification of carbohydrates are the polysaccharides. They contain more than 10 monosaccharide units. They are also known as glycan of complex carbohydrates because they have high molecular weight. They are sparingly soluble in water. They are not sweet, unlike the disaccharides, which are very sweet. Now, they do not possess any aldehyde or a ketone group. Now, these polysaccharides, they are also classified into two types, which are homopolysaccharide and heteropolysaccharide. Now, the homopolysaccharide, they contain the same type of monosaccharide unit, and in the heteropolysaccharide, they contain two or more different types of monosaccharide units or their derivatives. These homopolysaccharide by some textbook are also known as homoglycans, while the heteropolysaccharide are also known as heteroglycans. Now, let us look at the examples of these homoglycans or these homopolysaccharides. Now, they include the starch that we mostly hear about. Starch is an example of a homopolysaccharide. Then another example is cellulose. Then glycogen is also an example of homopolysaccharide. If you remember, glycogen is the storage form of carbohydrates. Then we also have chitin. While an example of heteroglycan or heteropolysaccharide, they include agar, agarose, gum, and also pectin. Now, there are other examples of polysaccharide, and they include glycosaminoglycan, also known as mucopolysaccharides. So finally, let us see the functions of these carbohydrates. And number one is that they are the most abundant source of energy. For example, when 1 gram of carbohydrate is oxidized, it yields 4 kilocalories of energy. And two is that they are the storage form of energy in the form of glycogen, which is mainly stored in the liver and in the muscle. And number three is that non-digestible carbohydrates, which are mainly polysaccharides like the agar, the cellulose, the gum and pectin, is that they serve as dietary fibers. And four is that they participate in the structure of cell membrane like the glycolipids and the glycoproteins. And number five is that they are also the precursors of certain organic compounds like the nucleic acids, which are the RNA and the DNA, because RNA, which is ribonucleic acid, ribose is the sugar that is present in RNA, while DNA, deoxyribose, is the sugar present in DNA. So they are the precursors for nucleic acid, and they are also precursors of compounds like glycolipids and glycoproteins. And another function of this carbohydrate is that they play a role in lubrication, in cellular intercommunication, and immunity. If this video have helped you, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Biochemistry Academy for more biochemistry courses like this. Arigato. See you in our next video.